Welcome to the Tackling College Sports Podcast, the definitive resource to help you navigate your way to play college-level sports. Here are your hosts, Chris Legates and Mark Franco, where they want you, the TCS Nation, to be your best.
Welcome, TCS Nation, and thanks for tuning in to the Tackling College Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Franco, and alongside me is our cruise director, Chris Legates. Chris longs for the days of hiking up his tube socks, heading outside and seeing just how far he could pull Stretch Armstrong's legs. Good morning, pal.
Yeah, that's great, man. I continuously, I never know where you get this stuff from, man. I really don't. I
dig deep. So, hey, Chris, today our guest is Coach Hines, Kurt Hines. And Coach Hines, we thank you for carving out some time for us.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It's a blessing to connect.
Absolutely. So we're going to get to into social media later on. However, I stumbled on Coach Hines on Twitter and thought I would read the tweet that caught my attention. And it's body language matters. Doing your job matters. Empowering others matters. Eye contact matters. Firm handshakes matter. Giving your all matters. Keeping your word matters. Putting team first matters. Showing up matters. Everything you do matters.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. It's awesome.
It's a great tweet. I love it.
Yeah, and it's so powerful.
Sure appreciate that.
Yeah.
Love it. And that's the tweet. I shared it with Chris. I go, I'm going to contact him and see if we can't get him on.
Yeah, it's what it's all about, man. It's what it's all about, 100%.
And Kurt, you may not know, but like probably 80% of our guests, believe it or not, come from just contacting folks on Twitter.
Yeah,
it's been a great avenue for us. So without further, go ahead.
I was going to say it truly is a powerful tool. I think youth, correctly can bring some real good people together and do some great things.
Agreed, 100%. So let's dive right in. I'll be respectful of your time. And Kurt, can you give our listeners a history of your background and how you ultimately wound up in Southern California?
Well, it's a long story. I'll make
we have
short
time
for the podcast here. So I got into coaching 22 years ago, almost 23 years ago. I was a college senior, and one of my professors asked me to see if I'd be interested in coaching it was a volunteer coaching position for a special needs flag football team. And I jumped at the chance because I was an elementary education major. And the first time I saw one of the young girls, I think she was in 6th grade, young lady with Down syndrome, catch a football that was probably tossed underhand, if I remember correctly, less than 5 yards away, her eyes just lit up. And I thought, man, I knew I wanted to teach. And I had played football from 2nd grade through college. But I thought, man, I want to coach. I want to see that. So my first few years coaching, my wife and I had children very young. So my first 4 years teaching, I didn't look to coach. My 5th year came around as an elementary school teacher. I reached out to the local high school football coach, just looking to get on staff in any capacity. Wasn't looking for a paid position. Was willing to be a glorified water boy, if you will, but wanted to be around the game again. And it just so happened that this very successful program had a freshman head coaching position open. And that kind of started a passion and a lifetime calling, I truly feel it is, to coach. As I said, going on 22 years now. What brought us from the East Coast out to the West Coast was, as I mentioned, my wife and I had children young. We were 19 when we had our youngest. Or our oldest, rather, and she came out here at school, came out to San Diego State, and you can't help but love the weather here. So we came to visit for a bunch of years, and she's very, very much smarter than I am. But we came out here and visited for about 4 or 5 years, off and on, and never gave it a second thought of moving out here. I'd become a head coach in Bedford, New Hampshire. It was a brand new high school, very blessed to have created, not myself, but we created a powerhouse football program in from the first year of getting our teeth kicked in every week to going to the state championship 3 out of my last 4 years there. We had 122 young men in the program, had just built a brand new weight room. Like things were rolling. We're just loving it. And then my daughter had gone off and not gone off. We approved. It sounded like she ran off. But she had a beautiful wedding. She got married and had a child. So we didn't want to be Skype, as amazing as technology is.
Yeah, sure.
We didn't want to be Skype grandparents. So we moved out here 4 years ago and haven't looked back. Missed family and friends. Don't miss anything about the weather. But so we ended up in San Diego where we are now.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I know Bedford, New Hampshire a little bit because there's an indoor soccer facility there. And
yes.
And I've been there many, many times. I've made that trek up there. So I know Bedford well, and I know the new high school and everything. So it's something I actually have a tie into. So that's a great story, man. That's awesome.
It is a great story. So I'm gonna switch gears here, and Kurt, since we connected over Twitter, and I know you're on Instagram and perhaps on other platforms, is the use of social media important to you?
It's so important now, and more important than I could have ever imagined. My introduction into probably for most of us, into social media was when Facebook came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never got into the whole MySpace or whatever it was, and Facebook was natural, it was fine, it's fun, and I teach elementary school and coach high school football, but I also paint murals. So Instagram came out, and I'm like, it's a good way to show some of your artwork and connect. And I'm a visual person. When Twitter came out, I wanted nothing to do with it for the first, I don't know, 4 or 6 years, however long the platform was out. My wife, God bless me, she's my best friend, biggest supporter. She would come to all the away games, and by the time, she would leave right after the game and be home well before we were even halfway home sometimes, depending on how far the trip was. And I would call her and say, hey, who won this game or who won that game, trying to find the scores and the standings. And so finally she said, get on Twitter and you can have that, for that. So I got on originally not to connect with anyone or to network or anything of the sort, but just to keep up with scores of local high school football.
Sure.
And then I don't know why or how it happened, but it was the day before we left 4 years ago, the day before we left Goffstown, New Hampshire, where we lived, to drive across country. And I remember sitting on the couch looking at my phone, and I hopped on Twitter, and I had something like 1,000 some odd followers. And I remember laughing, going, why did that many people give a rat's tail what I have to say?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And it was fun. And then just around that time, I don't know why I decided to, but I posted a video. And it resonated with a good group of people or a good number of people. And then it just kind of exploded. And it's been interesting because it has been such a blessing to open so many doors to connect with gentlemen like yourselves. And it's opened up speaking engagements where I've gone to Utah, Mississippi, and Texas. So, there's a good chance I'm being flown out to Hawaii this summer,
lucky you.
Which is not a bad thing. Just through the power of social media and kind of sharing your passion. I think it's paramount, and from our young men's standpoint or young women, that's how colleges are recruiting now. I mean,
Yep.
I can't imagine how much easier, when Huddle came out,
Right.
how much easier it was for coaches to exchange film as opposed to driving to meet someone in a parking lot and felt like we were doing something shady, but we were just exchanging film with someone.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's the same level of convenience now, or even greater, for college coaches to sit in their living room or their coach's office, however they do it, and look at someone's film halfway across the world or country or whatever. It's just such a powerful tool.
Exactly. Wow.
Kurt, you mentioned the recruiting process just now as well. And as you know, our podcast is geared towards student athletes and their parents and trying to help them navigate their way through the recruiting process. Curly, as a successful high school coach, you've had players that have been involved in the recruiting process. What has your advice been to them about the process and how to approach it?
Great question. I think some of what I share might resonate with some people, might really irritate others. First thing is I tell them, and we've heard this before, so this is not something that is just my own, but I've often heard it said and shared to enjoy the recruiting process, to not get too stressed out by it, but don't get caught up in it. And what I mean by that is it's really a 40-year decision, the colleges you go to. Not that you can't transfer, and many people do for academic or family or athletic reasons. But that's where so many of us meet your future spouses. That's where you meet connections that you may end up working with or for someone. So I want our young men to realize that it's a lot more than just going to play football somewhere. And also, I think there's a danger, and I've seen a good number of young men from my own programs in the past and other programs where they get so caught up in posting and sharing and tweeting about the different offers that they spend more time, it seems, talking about their offers than they do continuing to do what it took to get those offers. And I mean, in the classroom and in the weight room and doing all that stuff. So, the recruiting process is something that I think can be a dangerous trap for players, parents, and coaches if we don't keep it in perspective of it's a tool to help get our young men an education and get them their foot in the door somewhere.
That's great. And we know your approach to teams and individual athletes is about positivity and enthusiasm and energy. And you're trying to get the best out of players and also kind of get them out of their comfort zone as well. In your 22 years of coaching, Kurt, what do you think about the modern athlete now and how he's different than when you first started coaching? What do you think maybe is the same as well?
It's funny. I was just talking to, so I teach fourth grade during the day. I'm using air quotes. Coach in the afternoon and evenings, elementary school teacher by day. Talking to a coworker about that just this morning, and she was saying how much kids have changed. And I looked at her and I said, I really don't think they have. And she looked at me and I said, it's the parents. The parents
Sure.
have changed. It wasn't the kids 5 or 10 years ago, however long it was, that started, complaining from the stands about everyone getting a trophy and all this different stuff. I'm actually dealing with, and I won't get too personal into it right now, but a situation with a family from our program that it's not, unfortunately, it's not past tense yet, furious that their son didn't get a particular award at the end of the season. Great young man, great season, great career playing for us, but just did not get that award. And as a staff, we made that decision for a number of reasons. But I don't know if our student athletes have changed much. I think so often as parents, we mess things up by meddling where we shouldn't and not letting coaches coach. I can't imagine my parents ever going to any of my football coaches, youth through high school or college, and complaining about A, playing time, or B, trophies or plaques or you name it. So I don't know if the young men or, the young women we coach have really changed that much. I just think we need to get back to the old school. And I'm not talking about tough love. I'm talking about just truly, sincerely loving our players and empowering our players. And kids want to be coached hard, and they want to be coached up. They don't want a yes-man coach or just a best friend. I truly believe that 99.9% of the people we coach want honest, authentic, transparent coaching, not just somebody to tap on the shoulder when they do well.
Hey, Kurt, do you agree that most kids are not hearing no enough?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Well, it's that, and I just shared with, I started to do a leadership council with the young men in our program at the end of this past season. And we were talking about, I said, somewhere along the lines, I'm blaming myself, our generation of the parents.
Absolutely.
We started to teach or feel, and this goes through politics, religion, sports, that defeat or no is a negative thing. And without getting preachy with you guys, I mean, that's when we have our greatest growth, is when the world or society or coach or someone says no. And then we find out, all right, how bad do I want this? How bad do I want the yes? And what am I willing to do to get there? So, yeah, I do. I think as a society, I think we just have turned no into a negative thing and defeat into a negative thing and adversity into a negative thing, where all those things can be powerful tools if we have a strong enough why to get us to where we want to go.
And this comes up a lot, and Chris and I discuss this a lot, and a lot of times we revert back to saying that 9/11 had a pretty big impact on how this generation parented kids. And we just think that, it was these sort of overprotection, let's take care of everything for them. And I think out of that grew a lot of these participation, not saying no. And I think it's a huge disservice.
Yeah, that's a great. I'm sitting here kind of with my jaw open because I've never heard it stated that way before, but that's powerful. I mean, I love what you just shared because I had never connected the two, but gosh, that's powerful, and it makes perfect sense that you just said it, the overprotectiveness and with the best of intentions,
right? And
now you're looking back and the damage that some of us have created. Wow, that's a great comment.
Yeah, that's something we've spoken about at dinners, on the phone, at bars, anywhere where we have a chance to talk about this, and we do quite often. And being involved in the youth game and the college game like I am, and Mark being a youth sport parent as well, we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly on all ends, as I know you have as well. But just a quick question, kind of piggybacking on what you said before, Kurt. How's your coaching changed in 22 years?
You know what's funny? How has it changed in 22 years? I'm definitely a much better coach than I was when I was younger. I think when I first started out coaching and I didn't know what I was doing, the X's and O's, man, I've learned so much more. I thought I knew football when I played, and then I thought I knew football when I started out coaching. And what I know now it's embarrassing to look back, but it's also embarrassing and it's encouraging because I know I have that much more growth ahead of me. So I've grown with my knowledge of the game. One of the things I did really wrong as a young coach was I wanted to be liked by everyone. And I think a lot of us do, and there's nothing wrong by that. But there were times that I should have been more honest with players and more honest with parents. And now as a coach, because I am a firm believer in the power of why. And when other people talk about having thick skin. What does that really mean? Well, for me, it means having a strong enough why where when someone disagrees with me, whether it's a play call or someone starting in a certain position or having to remove a young man from our team or whatever it may be, if my why is strong enough, I think because my why has been growing over the years and I've really I've gotten to the core of why I coach, my coaching has become that much greater. And when I say greater, I in no means mean greater than someone else or another coach. But I had an opportunity to speak at several different clinics in Utah. I think it was last summer. And I stood before the group of men, and I said, I'm the greatest. I said, there's not a greater coach in this room than me. And you could see some of them look at me with their eyebrows like, who is this arrogant, or ready to either walk. Yeah, exactly right. How to turn people away, in one sentence. And what I went on to say was, I'm not saying I'm greater than anyone else, but I don't think anyone's greater than me.
Right.
Because I think so often as in society, we judge our worth, our value, or our success as a coach on the level we coach at. Oh, he's a college coach. He must be better than me.
Right.
Or he's a coach in the NFL. Or we judge it based on wins and losses. And the longer I coach this game, the more I realize that some of the best coaches are freshman coaches that are full-time volunteers that have more knowledge and passion than someone that may have been doing it at a real high-level school that just kind of fell into a position. I think the greatest way, aside from X's and O's, that I've grown and changed as a coach is just my understanding of my own why and the importance that has and the role it plays in connecting with and trying to empower not just the young men I coach, but the gentlemen I coach with.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point too. That your assistant coaches become people that will go out and take a little bit of your style, add their individuality, and become their own coaches through that method of doing things. One of the questions I do have you before I turn it over to Mark, and you speak of your impact on players. How important is it for, and I wouldn't say an elite player because I do think we throw that term around much, much too easily these days, but how important is it for a successful player to be a quote-unquote student of the game, Kurt?
I think I think that's really what separates the good from the great players.
Yes.
I think students of the game not only take time to study and break down film, but they become a student of the game, understanding the value of strength and conditioning, and when we grow. I always, it's a joke now with our players, but I always ask them, hey, when's your workout over? We have workouts this afternoon, and they know, they better know, they let the freshmen know, your workout's over once your fork hits the plate. When we're in the weight room, we're tearing up on our muscles in a healthy and in a wise way, but it's when we sleep and when we rest and when we eat that our muscles really grow. I think being a student of the game can take a good player and help make them great, and a great player and make them that much more dominant on the field.
You've seen players that clearly have had, God-given ability, Kurt, but the majority of them aren't going to run 4.3 40s and stuff of that nature. But how important is a growth mentality for a player to be successful?
I'm sorry, how important is the growth mentality?
Yeah, I mean, does a player really need to have a growth mentality to become a college-bound player, let's say? I mean, if we're adding student to the game, clearly you got to have some God-given ability. Would you say a third component is a growth mentality?
Yeah, and I'm not sure you can correct me. For me, when I hear the term growth mentality, I look at that as the overall being. The understanding of not just physically growing or understanding different coverages defensively, for example, but understanding their role as a leader, whether they're a captain or not. Now, are we talking about the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And just the will to get better in every facet of the program, Kurt. And you mentioned it, on and off the field. I think a growth mentality, when you have those solid citizens in your program, is the kid that wants to get better, wants to do whatever they can to get better. Being a student of the game is a piece of that, watching the video, watching games on TV, putting themselves in the positions that, someone on TV plays and seeing what they may do. But also, I think, like you said, the little things off the field. Are you eating properly? Are you getting enough rest? So I'm sure not all 120 guys do that. And I'm sure that the better ones have that growth mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have all seen student athletes that have, just this God-given talent. They have such an athleticism and ability, but they miss too many workouts because they know they're going to start anyways.
Right.
And I'm not talking about the extreme of the gifted athletes that are punks and that are disrespectful, because very often there are young men who are just and young women, but young men who are gifted athletes who. A little bit of arrogance, but just, hey, no, I can miss some workouts. I'm not talking back to coach. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm not getting kicked out of class, and they're still going to start. I think that also, as you mentioned, the growth mentality helps take that player to such a new level. Yeah. So they realize, hey, I don't want to – I always tell our guys, I want every time you walk in the weight room to realize two things, or keep in the back of your mind. One, I'm either adding or taking away from the energy in this room. And I'm a firm believer that's whether it's the weight room, the practice field, the game field, the locker room, we're always doing one of those two things, adding to the energy or taking away from it. And the second thing I always say to our players is, and I know I did this, I think one of the biggest mistakes we make when we're training is we look around and say, all right, I play tight end, who else am I competing with? And I want to do one more reps than him, or one more squat, or 5 more pounds. And we don't think about the guy we're going to line up against Friday night, or the kid that's going to move into town or transfer from one school to another. And I think those people that have the growth mentality realize that if we're not constantly striving to get 1% better than we were last time, we're either never going to reach our fullest potential, or, as the old adage says, when we line up toe-to-toe with someone, the person that was always striving to do 1% more is going to beat us.
I'll tell you what, I'm fired up right now, Kurt. I got my fists clenched. I'm shaking my head right now. So I agree with you 100%, man. It's so great to hear. Mark.
We're switching gears once again. Kurt, can you speak about faith and how important that is to you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because that's it's something that I know for me personally, my faith is everything. It's and I've gone through, you talk about growth, I was raised by Catholic parents who just taught me some great values, gave me a great foundation. When I met my wife some 25 years ago, whatever it was, 24 years ago, she was Mormon. So I joined the Mormon church and was involved very heavily in that for about 14 years. And just about 7 years ago or so, walked away from any organized religion, if you will, still go to church. We go to a non-denominational Christian church. And without getting preachy, for me, it really comes down to just a relationship with Christ, just a personal relationship. And I think so many of us, and I'm guilty of this, I almost said in the past, I'm always trying to grow. We look at our lives and we compare them with others. And I had a pastor one time that said, when we compare ourselves to axe murderers, we're completely missing the mission of Christ. And what he meant by that was, so many of us, I'm pointing at myself now, say, well, yeah, I might do X, Y, or Z, but I'm not doing what he's doing. Or I'm not doing, and we compare it to other people. And I think, comparison is so often, in my opinion, the thief of joy. I had a buddy of mine that was my line coach in New Hampshire. His wife is from Southern California. They just had a brand new child, or, the first child. So they moved back out here, and he got a head coaching job and I was thrilled for him, where they have like 14 different jersey combinations, and they have their fundraising. It's ridiculous. And for about a day or two, it really started to eat at me, because I love where I am. I love our school here at Coronado High School. But financially, it's not like the island itself. A lot of people look at the island and think, man, they must get the best of everything. And because of the way California is run, as far as politically,
right,
all the property tax goes to Sacramento, and they decide where the money's quote unquote needed.
Yeah.
So we have to pay for our own buses. We don't have transportation for any away games. So, and once again, it's a blessing. I love being here. But the reason I share that was because for about a day or two, it really started to eat at me. I thought, man, imagine if I had this, or imagine if I had that. And it had to bring me back to my why. I'm not coaching football so we can have 14 different jersey combinations. Yes, that would be nice. But I'm coaching football to use this platform to help empower people to do more and be more than they ever thought. So, for me, to get back to your question, my faith means everything to me. And it's tough. You try not to be preachy to people. But so often in my mind, it comes back to a quote I had read years ago that said, always preach the gospel, and when necessary, use words. So I don't need to talk about Christ. I don't need to talk about, my faith per se, but if I'm living a Christ-like life, if I'm loving my players, and that goes from the best of the athletes to the kid that can't put his helmet on straight, if I'm truly showing them selfless service, servitude and leadership, I think I'm going to be able to do a pretty good job in helping not just create a program, but helping change lives.
I love everything you just said. Now, let me ask you this. Have you experienced any pushback given the current climate that we live in, whether it be on or off the field?
I haven't yet. One funny, I'll make it a quick story, was back in New Hampshire, I had a young man that at the end of the game had hurt his knee. So I was walking off the field with he and his father. And his father said, what do we do for John's knee? I said, well, you guys saw Eric, our trainer, ice it, make sure you get the MRI. And I said, pray about it, because we had a big playoff game coming up. And the father, we're walking off the field, and the father and son stopped dead in their tracks, looked at me with not a smile on their face, and said, we don't believe in God. Oh. Now, because I was a lot more foolish than I am now, I looked at them, I said, well, I'll pray for you, and kept walking. That could have been ugly. I was at a public school, as I am now. Long story short, what happened was, unfortunately, the mother and father, 2 years after the son graduated, went through a pretty ugly divorce. But the father sent me this, what would have been, I think, the equivalent of a 5-page, if he printed it out, email, bringing up that moment and saying, where do you go to church? I'd love to check it out. Oh, wow. Now, he was a self-proclaimed atheist that ended up getting baptized. And there were, I'm sure God used so many other people in so many other greater ways than he used me. But for whatever reason, that one moment, that one conversation with that father and son planted a seed. So fortunately, that was not pushed back. But I'm a firm believer. We tell our players all the time, people are always watching what we're doing.
Right.
As players, as coaches, a great majority of them, because they want to see us succeed. They want to learn from us and watch us. And there will always be those, what do you call them, critics, haters, whatever you want to call them, people out there that are just waiting for us to fail.
Right.
And that's motivation for me. Not the haters, I'm not saying haters are motivation, but the fact that people are always watching us as Christians, as coaches, as teachers, because it's such an opportunity to not try to live some facade or fake life, but just to live your best lives. And when people see you failing in a game or in life or struggling, but still being that authentic and that transparent, true, positive person, I think it's a powerful tool.
That's a great story.
Yeah. You know, Kurt, like I spoke to you before we were on the air, 28 years for me now coaching college soccer. And to this day, my philosophy still is that the reason why I coach is to teach people life lessons through our sport. Eventually, nobody will remember the results of the games, but you'll remember the relationships, you'll remember the adversity you went through, and there'll be a moment or moments that you'll be able to tap into your experience as an athlete, and it will help you through an adverse situation. It'll help you through a successful situation. It'll help you with your family, your job, whatever. And I think if, as a coach, like you said, if you can present that and knowing that you're always being watched, I mean, I think, like your story tells, you're changing lives, man.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And it is. It's such a, we as coaches have such a captive audience because whether it's soccer, football, tennis, you name it, whatever sport, I believe that most of the young men or young women we coach want to be on that field, court, rink, whatever it is. Sometimes you have parents at different levels say, hey, obviously you're at college, so probably less or a lot less. But sometimes parents say, hey, you have to do something. I have a biased opinion with football being football is a painful sport. It hurts. I think children, young men and young women, would most often, if they're told they have to do something, go out for a less painful sport. But we have this captive audience, and they're with us on average 2.5 to 3 hours a day. And in today's day and age, and even when I was playing high school football, and my parents, God bless them, are still around, but they were very involved, very active. But even when I was in high school, we didn't have sit-down family meals that often. And when I was home, you were either watching TV or playing video games or outside playing or doing homework. So I think so often we as coaches have more face-to-face, one-on-one quality time with our athletes than many parents do.
That's 100%. And I think like you get the amount of time you spend, and we just did a study in the NCAA that came out that in a 168-hour week, Division I student athletes now are spending 70 to 75 hours on their sport with their teammates, with their program. And it's not just on the field, it's travel, it's in study halls, it's doing social work. So when you look at it now, think about how much time athletes are spending with their coach. They become a second family, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell one, if I can share one quick story.
Of course.
So the single greatest moment we had this year was the culmination. We had good success, wins and losses. But we had a young man that reached out to me about a month before the season started that was not on my radar, was not a football player, had never played, texted me this War and Peace length text, introducing himself. And this young man, as a sophomore in high school right now, already has been offered a legitimate scholarship to the University of Arizona to play baseball. His father played baseball and football there years ago when I played for the Padres, and less than a year ago was diagnosed with a brain tumor and passed away.
Oh, man.
And then this young man reaches out to me and says, I want to play football. And I was just blown away. So I had a chance to meet with he and his mother. We met in the office for about an hour one day, and I was able to share my testimony and my reason as to why I coach, and as passionate as I am about the violence and the chess match and everything that goes with football, that it's a platform for me to help, to want to change lives. Fast forward to the best thing. He ended up starting for us on offense and defense. And at the end of the season, our final game, we got knocked out of the playoffs in the second round. He sent me a text. I was driving home, and he sent me a text and said, Coach, this might sound weird. And then you could just see the ellipses going. He was gonna. You'll write more. We had said that first, and then I knew there was more. So I was waiting for it. It was kind of like out of the movies. I'm like, all right, what's weird? What is he gonna say? And he said, it feels good to cry about something other than family. Oh, and I thought, man, that's if nothing else, we were able to create a distraction for him for a football season where he could not be in a depressed state and just go home every day because his father was his best friend. Mm-hmm. I'm not by any means looking to or expecting or ever wanting to replace that, but we've had so many conversations during and since the season, this young man and I, where I said to him, I said, Ryan, I said, you know we're going to be each other's lives till the day I die. And he just smiled because I know, Coach. And it's just, for me, that's also that's what it's about. Because as you mentioned, people will forget. Even the rings are going to fade and the trophies are going to fade and tarnish and all this different stuff. But, you know, I don't want to wait till my deathbed, as sometimes people say, and say, hey, I know I made a difference. It's such a blessing to wake up every day, win or lose, and realize that we have the opportunity, if we don't get full of ourselves, we have the opportunity to make a difference every single day as a coach.
Right.
It's beautiful, man. Beautiful. Kurt, we've seen participation numbers in youth sports decline over the last decade or so. Football seeing some decline due to concussion scares and CTE and some long-term physical effects as well. How do you see the game changing in the future, and what do you think needs to be done to take some of that worry out of the game?
I'm going to steal something out, and I'll have to always give credit to you guys. I'm going to steal what you guys shared about 9/11, about the attacks.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we're being too protective. Where I've had parents that have kept their sons or said, hey, at the end of the season, they're not going to play again, out of fear of concussions. And then I start talking to them, and I don't ever want to have that on my shoulders or my mind or conscience, however you want to phrase it, and talk a young man or a parent into having someone play, and then God forbid them getting seriously injured. I always let the parents know it is a violent sport. I think it's safer than ever. I think between the coaching we have, the technology we have with the equipment and everything, I think it's a safer game than ever. But I think sometimes we try to protect them, and often I'll talk to parents, and they'll say, well, you know, so-and-so has had 3 concussions, and I look at them because I know he only had 1 with football. And they're like, well, you know, snowboarding 1 time, and then skateboarding. And I think, listen, we can't bubble wrap our children. I don't want a generation of 90-year-olds sitting in some nursing home somewhere 30 years from now saying, man, we lived to, you know, ripe old age, but man, I wish I did something with my life.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, we have to be smart about it, and there are certain, you know, reasons at a certain point someone should step away from the game. I'm blessed to say that our numbers, my final year in New Hampshire, we had 144 young men in our program, and I came out to California, and I thought, man, California ball, man, it must be double that, and for some schools it is. My first year here at Coronado, we only had 37 young men in our entire program, freshmen through seniors.
Wow.
Ironman football.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And you guys will get a kick out of this also, being from the East Coast. Water polo.
Yeah.
I've known that sport existed since watching on the Olympics.
Right.
I very naively never realized that it starts in Southern California here in Coronado, and it's a fall sport. So I'll see these.
Hey, those guys are in shape, you know.
I'll tell you. Talk about tight end, D end, wide receiver, slim waist, broad shoulders.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
There's no downtime in that sport.
it's and what are you gonna do? Say, hey, come hit the sled with us, come run some 110s or whatever we do, or go swim in the pool. And it's a great sport. But we went from 37 young men my first year 3 years ago to this past season, my third year, we have 70 now, and I think a lot of that is. And we have a long way to go. I'm not trying to disguise it at all. We have a long way to go in a lot of ways. But I love the fact that we have made that increase, as you mentioned, when so many schools are seeing a decline. It's a confirmation for me that the young men are believing in what we're creating and building, and then they understand that it's so much more than just a game.
Your message and style must be resonating, that's for sure.
It's I'm blessed to coach with coaches that I think share a lot of the same passions. So and the young men, you know, and the young women. Each year I've been here so far, we've had 2 different young women. They're talking to their friends, and then you're seeing excitement again. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Kurt, I'm going to tell you this. I know you've been to state finals, and you've hit the sleds, and you've done 110s, like you said. You've trained in the heat. But what's coming up now is nothing you've ever been through as we approach the getting to know you portion of the TCS interview. I'd get a towel ready. I'll get you some Gatorade ready, because this, my friend, is going to be some difficult lines of questions. Mark?
And cue the music.
I love it.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about
Perfect for Christmas time.
Oh,
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
getting to
Oh,
I can't hear the music on my end, but I'll look forward to hearing it with the podcast.
it's getting to know you.
Getting to Know You by Julie Andrews.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
putting it my
All right. I'm going to put on my game show host voice, Kurt, and if we were to search your phone, what would be the top 3 played songs or artists?
Well, AC/DC's got to be up there.
All right.
Old school AC/DC.
Yeah, you're winning us over.
Yeah, another one is Jesus Culture. It's a contemporary Christian band I absolutely love, and I am embarrassed to admit this, but with my 2 grandsons, Disney, Moana, Frozen songs that I play with my grandsons.
Sure.
So maybe we can cut that part out of there. I'll lose some followers.
Chris can relate. Chris can relate to that. He's got his kids are young.
Yeah, I have a 6-year-old and a
There
9-year-old,
you
so
go.
I understand.
There you go.
Question number 2: who is the most famous person you have in your contact list?
Famous person. I'll give a shout out to in Corey Proctor, who is not famous, but he's the most famous in my book. He played for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm a huge Cowboys fan, even being from the East Coast. I met him when I spoke out in Mississippi, and talking about a man larger than life. I'm not small, but he is like, man, must be like 6'4", 300-some pounds, and
Wow.
his spirit and his personality and everything about him is just really, really impressive.
Wow.
Yeah, Corey Proctor.
Corey Proctor.
And I guess P. Diddy. No, I'm just kidding. Corey,
Corey takes the cake.
yes.
Question number 3: do you have a favorite quote or quotes?
You know, one of my favorite quotes that most recently is "Competition breeds success," and I think that resonates for me in any walk of life. You know, when you see someone better than you, whether it's an individual or a program, it's fight or flight. You know, it's going to breed success, or it's going to get the posers to walk away.
Sure.
So, yeah, competition breeds success.
I like it. Number 4: can you give the listeners a little-known fact about yourself?
Little known fact about myself. I mentioned briefly, but I'm love painting. I paint murals. I painted murals on walls, ceilings, indoors, outdoors, for years now, and that's a real passion of mine.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's cool. Yeah, definitely.
I got to you got to send us some of that work. I want to see it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Question number 5: who's been the biggest influence in your life?
You know, I love my father, but and hopefully he doesn't listen to this podcast in particular. But my uncle Bernie, he passed away a few years ago of cancer, but he was one of 13 children. Grew up in Mexico.
Wow.
He was the hardest working, most blue collar, Christ-like man I've ever met. That just resonated with me, and he's a man that I've always admired.
Excellent. Next: if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would you choose?
This is tough. So I've been asked this question before, and my first answer always has people roll their eyes or get mad at me. I have to say Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And I think, man, there's ever been a better human being that's ever walked the earth. From a football standpoint, I think Tony Dungy would definitely be up there.
Okay.
So I'll just stop at those two, but that'd be a heck of a dinner.
Yeah, that would be. Question number 7: if you weren't in Southern California teaching and coaching, what do you think you would be doing?
The easy answer is I'd still be in Bedford, New Hampshire teaching and coaching.
With
Maybe
a squall alert by the way.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. You know, I think my modeling days are over, or never even started. It's. I don't know what I would be doing. I absolutely. I think one of way too few people who truly loves what I do.
Yeah.
I told my students today we had our final day with my 4th graders before Christmas break, and we all share one word every morning and ask each other why they said that word. And I said blessed. And they looked at me and I said, guys, I love you. I love you guys. I love my class. I love what I do. And I don't know what else I'd be doing.
Well, if you have a hard time answering that question, that means you're doing
Yeah,
what
that's
you
true.
should be doing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Question number 8: what is one thing that you believe that others might think is crazy?
That everything happens for a reason. I firmly believe that. And my brother and I have talked and argued about this many times over the years. He definitely does not agree with that statement. But I'm a firm believer. I don't think we always know the reason. I don't think that's part of God's plan for us to always know it. But I firmly believe everything does have a reason.
Yep. And number 9, what's your morning ritual?
Morning ritual. Before I roll out of bed every morning, my wife and I say prayer. I hop in the bathroom and put on, I have a contemporary Christian music playlist that I play every morning when I shower to get my mind right. And I would love to say, but I'd be lying, that I run or work out every morning, but that's more of an afternoon, early evening thing.
Sure.
Minus the run. It's the workout, but not the run. Yeah.
Tough on the knees.
There you go.
Last question I have is, what book are you currently reading or have just read?
Yeah, the book I just finished reading for the second time is They Call Me Coach by John Wooden.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I think he's a great coach.
I haven't.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
I really did. I really did. My all-time favorite book that I've read 3 times now is Inside Out Coaching by Joe Ehrman. And it's such a powerful book for me on, it's really an autobiography about his life. And he played football and lacrosse at Syracuse, went on to play football for the Colts. But he breaks down all coaches, any level, football, soccer, high school football, college, whatever. He says every single coach is either transactional, like a bank transaction, those guys that will only pour into young men or young women to get something from them for their own agenda. So he says they're all transactional or transformational. And that book for me really, added a lot of strength and power to my why as to why I coach.
Wow, excellent.
Well, let me tell you something, Kurt. Did you not get... I'm impressed. You crushed this line of questioning. Many people on our show have folded under this line of questioning, where they just say, no more, I can't take it. We're going to give you a special theme here because you did get the gold medal for today.
He's got special. Usually, and I know you can't hear this, but you'll hear it when we release it. It's a ball getting hit out of the park. But
yeah.
We're going to go with the Olympic theme.
Today we're giving the Olympic theme for you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
And this was
Who doesn't love the Olympic theme?
He doesn't sound like he even broke a sweat in his questions.
No, he's ready for more.
Well, I'll tell you this, Kurt. You did mention your modeling career in those questions, and
yes,
both Mark and I are 2 very handsome bald men like yourself.
Yeah.
So if you see maybe a bald magazine would like to hire the 3 of us,
Yeah, we can collab.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
mean, I think that's something that a future career for the 3 of us maybe.
I love it.
My last question for you, Kurt, is this one. What advice do you have for parents of student athletes and what you think maybe their role should be during the high school years as a fan and a parent, but also during the recruiting process?
Great question. We actually talk about that with our parents every spring ball and then the beginning of fall ball. And I just ask them to let us coach them, to be their biggest supporter. I think way too many parents often with the best of intentions, but they want to coach from the sidelines or coach from the car ride home or coach from whatever. And there's a time and a place for that. And I think once you step away from coaching your own child, and a lot of parents do that when their kids are younger in wiffle ball or t-ball or whatever it is, I think the biggest role parents should take on is being not their best friend, not their coach, but being their loving parent, being tough when they have to be tough, being supportive when they need to be supportive, and letting coaches and teachers coach and teach and realize that the skin that we have in the game is not some hidden agenda. We want to see them succeed, not just the year or years we have them, but long after. So just to support us.
That's beautiful, man. Mark?
Excellent. I'm going to wrap up with one last question, Kurt. So we know that you teach 4th grade. And have you taken anything that you've learned in the classroom and applied it to the football field, or perhaps vice versa? Does it work both ways?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question. I used to joke around and say the longer I taught and the longer I coached, the more I realized that my elementary school children are not that much different from my high school players. Having taught now for 25 years and coached for 22, there's more truth to that than I ever thought when I was joking about it. I think the biggest takeaway I've had, and once again, one of the things I think makes me not better than anyone else, but better than I would have been myself,
yep.
is that I think sometimes as coaches, we assume that if a player's given a playbook, or that we sit down to break down film with them, or if we have some chalk, that they should just get it. And, as a teacher in the classroom, I realize there are so many different learning styles. And there are so many children that have IEPs and 504s. When that school day ends and they go out to the practice field, those IEPs and 504s don't go with them. But those different needs they have definitely do. So when a young man seems like he doesn't care, or he's bored, or he's tuning out, instead of getting on him and just screaming at him, get to know him. I think it all goes down to relationships. If my young men know that I truly love them, not because of what they can do for me, but just for who they are, I'm going to get to know them on a personal level and realize their strengths, their weaknesses, their challenges, their hopes and dreams, and all that. I think as a teacher and a coach, if our youth, young men, young women, that we teach and coach, know that we truly, passionately love them as people, not as pawns or players, that we're going to accomplish so much more than just winning football games or getting good grades in a test.
That's beautiful, man.
Great way to end.
Beautiful.
Lastly, how can listeners get in touch with you, whether it be email, web, social media?
Yeah, so social media, it's I just slow down and think about this. I don't really message myself. It's Coach Kurt Hines, and that's for Instagram and Twitter. And I'm not proud of this gentleman, but I did get on TikTok. Still not thrilled about that. I'm not dancing or singing. I'll tell you that.
Listen, that platform amazes me. How you can open an account in 1 week and have like 1.5 million followers the following week.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's insane.
And then Facebook, it's Kurt Hines. And then email is I do have it's coachkurthines@gmail.com for speaking and different things like that.
Okay.
But it's fairly easy.
And we'll make sure all of that information will go up in the show notes so everyone can access it easily. And then lastly, is there anything you wish to promote or discuss that we haven't covered?
No, I appreciate you guys, giving me a chance to come on the show here. And I think that the world is a dark and scary place so often. And when you have people that go out of their way like you guys do to just spread positivity and get people on your show that have a passion for things, I appreciate what you guys do. So I just want to thank you.
Well, we have a ton of fun. So
yeah, you know what, Kurt? Thank you for your message and your positivity, especially like in a time when sometimes sports are dark. You bring a light to it that really is well appreciated by so many people, and it goes without saying that hopefully it resonates with more and more people, because there needs to be more of that. And from my standpoint and Mark's standpoint, when you do go to Hawaii for that, if you need an opening act, Mark and I are willing to go on a moment's notice.
And I'll keep that in mind.
100%. And once again, we appreciate you, Kurt, coming on and taking the time to speak with us, and all the best to you and your family. Merry Christmas. Don't go anywhere. As I rattle off this contact info, you can get in touch with us at tacklingcollegesports.com. Make sure you sign up for either first name and email to be included in the Friday 5, which is a lovely weekly email of 5 sports-related items that come right to your email automatically.
Beautiful.
Email is info@tacklingcollegesports.com, and then Facebook, of course, at it's Tackling College Sports everything. Twitter, Instagram. That's all you got to know, Tackling College. And then until next time, be your best.
Be your best.
Your college sports future awaits. So join the TCS Nation and be your best.